Hello, my name is Charlotte Goodwin, and today I'm going to read you Chapter 5 of my debut novel, The General Sun. Okay, so this chapter is set in Alice Springs in Australia on the planet Earth. Okay, I shall begin. Sarah walked down the street like she owned the place. She was short and slim, but her biceps bulged. She liked to lift heavy things to keep herself strong. Her dirty blonde hair cascaded down her back, and her tanned skin was covered with beads of sweat. It was another hot day in the miserable, stinking desert. Another day where more precious reserves of sun cream were used up. Her supplies were running low, and it was bloody expensive this far south. Like everything around here in the middle of nowhere. She pulled her rifle sling out of her cleavage. A little air flowed between her breasts. A tiny bit of relief from the incessant heat. Of all the cars they could have stolen, why did they nick the one with the broken aircon? She'd just got a tip-off. It had lifted her mood for all of 5 minutes. Then she remembered the oven on wheels she'd have to get back into. It was a good lead, but it would mean more hours in the car if Vinny agreed to follow it up, she thought, with a long, heavy sigh. Stark and John were sitting in the shade near the car when she returned from asking questions. The two men were her partners. They watched her back. She watched theirs. They had been working together since soon after the place got nuked. She'd met Stark when he tried to rape her. He'd underestimated her, as had John when he'd tried to rescue her. She hadn't needed his help. She didn't need anyone's help. Sarah could survive on her own, like she had since she'd run away from home as a teenager. She got sick of her stepdad using her as his own personal whore and had chosen a life on the streets instead. She'd been living rough since before China attacked and all the normal folks were sent into a headspin. It had been easy to make a living after the place collapsed. It was easy to survive when the police were off your back and the prey was vulnerable. It was at first. But these days, things were getting harder. The soft people left or got hard. The hard people got tougher, like she had. They'd had a good gig when they worked for Vinny. Recruiting muscle was one of the straightest jobs she'd ever had. She didn't have to fuck anyone. She didn't have to kill anyone. Not often. And it was more about coercion than threats. The threats came later. But they'd had a dry spell. They'd found no one in weeks and they'd been given an ultimatum. Become the muscle or find a new employer. They didn't want to be the muscle. They'd all done their time on that one, and they knew the life expectancy tended to be short. It was why they got out. It was why they worked in recruiting. It was a far safer job. They'd been served their notice in Danston, where Vinny had left them and taken their jeep. Arsehole. It wasn't a surprise, though, and they'd been grateful to be left alive. It was another chance, another opportunity to find the muscle he needed. They had to find someone, soon, and the arsehole who'd burnt their hands and knocked them out was perfect. Vinny would pay a lot to have him on his books. They'd slept on the floor of the gas station forecourt for hours. No one could wake them, but someone had dragged them into the shade. When they did wake, they wasted no time in stealing their weapons back from the bitch in the shop who'd stolen them. Then they stole another car. A crappy crossover thing that was just about had four-wheel drive, but rattled along like its wheels might fall off at any moment. It was a ride, though, and it was enough. They'd driven through the night, taking turns to keep moving and hoping to catch the man who'd floored them. The Stuart Highway ran from north to south, straight through Alice Springs, the last town of any size until the south coast, and most of that was nuked or blasted to shit. Anyone heading south would have to stop in the town, even if it was just to get supplies. That was what they'd guessed, and they were right. "I know where they went," she announced, as she got close enough for Stark and John to hear her. "Great. Where?" Stark replied. "They're heading southwest, towards Ayers Rock. They left not long back. An hour ago, maybe." "So we go after him? Alone?" John queried. "You took the three of us down last time. What makes you think you won't manage it again? Because this time we know what we're facing, and we'll be ready, Sarah replied, hands sliding onto her hips. And there'll be more of us. You planning on magicking muscle out of your arse, are you? Stark sniped. Sarah cast Stark a sideways glance. When I explain what we're going after to Vinny, I reckon I can persuade him to lend us some men. You going to tell me where we're going? It had taken a while, but curiosity seemed to have finally got the better of Fred. Aaron's hackles went up. How dare his driver ask questions? He quietly seethed while he resisted the urge to react. On Earth, Aaron had learned you had to pretend to tolerate your servant's nonsense, to an extent. In Kenya, you could have cops on your back if you were too brutal with the staff. Here, Fred would walk if you pissed him off. And right now, he needed him. He slowly turned to regard his driver. Fred's eyes were fixed ahead, on the road. Southwest, Aaron snapped in reply. It was south when we set off. Now it's southwest. Fred appeared completely unfazed by Aaron's tone. Does it matter? I guess not, as long as I'm being paid. The big man spoke calmly, as if he were used to people like Aaron. I've paid you every day. I'll keep paying you every day until I don't need you anymore. I pay you to drive and watch my back. I don't pay you to ask questions. Fred raised an eyebrow. No problem. I won't charge for this one. What happened at the gas station? The one in Danston? Aaron's irritation at Fred's questions was growing, but somehow he found himself conflicted. Part of him admired the man's impertinence, and he realised he had been getting bored of the silence. They tried to steal the truck. I decided to stop them. You don't carry a gun? And I've seen more muscle on the arms of a 10-year-old girl. How'd you floor 3 thugs? Magic. Aaron folded his arms. A smug smirk plastered across his stubbly face. Magic? You're kidding me. Nope. Fuck off. You asked, I told you. You're a mysterious man, Aaron. They drove in silence for a few more miles before Fred couldn't resist asking another question. If you could floor 3 thugs on your own, without a gun or a knife, what do you need me for? I don't care to drive. I'm an expensive driver. You can pay any old idiot just to drive. I can't do magic in my sleep. I need someone to make sure my throat isn't slit in the night. And as it turns out, you have some expertise that might be useful. Really? Fred said, smirk threatening to break out across his lips. You used to work for a drugs baron, right? Aaron replied, ignoring Fred's growing sneer. Yep. I'd like to say I was his right-hand man, but if I was, I'd be dead. Nickel killed his right-hand man, and his left-hand man, and a few others besides. You know about the drugs trade, though, Aaron continued. I know a bit. Seems like a good way to make a living. It's a dangerous one. Fred's sneer had gone. I plan to settle here, in Australia. I need a trade, Aaron said, his eyes fixed forward, but he could feel Fred's turning from the road to settle on the side of his face. Drugs is about the only one with any money in it anymore, Fred suggested. Aaron saw him shrug out of the corner of his eyes. Who is the biggest drugs baron in Australia? The one with the biggest empire? Does anyone lead them all? Fred chuckled. Are you serious about wanting to work in drugs? Yes, Aaron said in a deadpan tone. People don't just walk into the drugs trade. It doesn't work like that. Why not? No one will trust you. You can't just join a new cartel. You have to do years of dirty work before anyone will even go near you. You have to... Fuck! Fred exclaimed. What? A pickup truck sped past them, settled into the road ahead and braked. It was slowing down. Another truck appeared to their left, bouncing along the desert as it flanked them. An old SUV was at their right, and another accelerated to their rear. They were surrounded. In unison, the vehicles slowed until Fred and Aaron's car was forced to a halt. What's going on? Aaron asked, his panic betrayed in his voice. "Looks like someone wants a word with us." Fred looked to his left. A blonde woman climbed out of the SUV and knocked on Fred's window. He wound it down. "Get out of the car, both of you," she said. Fred turned to Aaron. "I suggest we do as she says." Men with assault rifles emerged from their vehicles. Everyone pointed their weapons at Aaron and Fred. There were 9 of them. Aaron was not confident he could disable them all, and just one bullet would do the trick if they took aim at him first. His anger prickled, an angry flush on his skin as the magic coursed through his veins. He could feel there was more magic here than at the gas station, but it wasn't enough. He was still weaker than the most junior sorcerer he'd employed when he'd been king. He had less magic than a village healer would on his home planet. He found he could not disagree with Fred's assessment and grudgingly got out of the car. The woman led them to a patch in the desert. The armed men surrounded them, their guns never leaving their targets. Aaron regarded the woman. His dark brown eyes shrunk to slits beneath his heavy brows. She looked familiar. The men who surrounded him all looked similar. Most wore jeans with ragged boots, some wore vests, others t-shirts. Most had close-cropped hair of various shades of brown, and one had dark skin. One had a broken nose with a missing tooth. He recognised him. It was the man who tried to rob his truck. This wasn't going to end well. He reached for his power. He had no choice. He would try to take them all and hope he had enough power. He let his mind find the fury. He closed his eyes, concentrated, and felt the power swell, build. He prepared to unleash it. Something bit him in the back. Searing pain ripped through his body with an electrifying judder. His quivering body tipped helplessly forward, the dust as a taser released 50,000 volts. He smashed into the ground with a heavy thud. Everything went black. Okay, so that's the end of Chapter 5. I'll be releasing Chapter 6 in a week's time. And don't forget, you can catch up on all my chapters and some book extracts and my book trailer on my YouTube channel, The Gallantrian Legacy. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening. Bye.